Do you think the first great civilization was ancient Egypt? You might be surprised. It wasn't. The very first true civilizations arose even earlier, in a region that was part of the so-called Fertile Crescent, on the territory of modern-day Iraq and parts of Syria. Just like in Egypt, rivers played a crucial role here. But not just one river, two. In the west flowed the Euphrates, and in the east, the Tigris. From these rivers, the region got its name. The ancient Greeks called it Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. Welcome to 10 Minutes History. Every year between February and March, the rivers would overflow and flood the surrounding plains. This made the soil fertile enough to support an ever-growing population. Because the climate here was drier than in Egypt, people had to invent a sophisticated irrigation system. That system boosted fertility even further and made it possible for the first large settlements and real cities to emerge. Even before the first great empire appeared, several cultures already existed in this region. One of them was the Ubaid culture. These people drained marshes, built houses out of mud, and developed various crafts. Another important culture was the Uruk culture, named after the city of Uruk. And that very city would soon become one of the first great cities in history. And this is where the Sumerians come onto the stage, the first true civilization we encounter in Mesopotamia. They appeared around 3,500 BC. It is not certain where they came from. Some scholars believe it was from the east, but the truth will probably never be known. They settled in the southern part of Mesopotamia. At the same time, other peoples were arriving as well. From the west came Semitic tribes known as the Akkadians, who settled further north. We'll talk more about them later. Meanwhile, in southern Mesopotamia, the city of Uruk was growing. By around 2900 BC, it was home to about 50,000 people. Some estimates even speak of up to 80,000. Those were astonishing numbers for the time. For comparison, medieval London in the 12th and 13th centuries, more than 4,000 years later, reached a maximum population of about 40,000 inhabitants. The rapid development of cities was also made possible by slavery. The Sumerians were among the first peoples for whom this practice is securely documented. Yet their society was progressive in many ways. Women here had more rights than in many later cultures. They could own land, trade, even take part in city councils, and they were allowed to seek divorce. The Sumerians left us an enormous legacy. They invented a lunar calendar of 12 months, divided the hour into 60 minutes, and laid the foundation of the sexagesimal system that we still use today. Building on this foundation, the Babylonians later introduced the 7-day week. The Sumerians also invented the wheel. At first, around 3,300 BC, it appeared as a potter's wheel. About 300 years later, the wheel was already in use on carts and wagons. And we must not forget their writing system, the so-called cuneiform script. They inscribed it with a stylus into clay tablets. Thanks to this, a huge number of texts have survived. Among them is the oldest known epic work, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was the legendary king of the city of Uruk. Sumerian society was divided into independent city-states, such as Ur, Kish, Lagash, Nippur, and others. At their head stood a ruler called an Ensi. Over time, more powerful kings, the Lugals, began to appear, uniting several cities under their authority. Each city had its own temple and its own gods, but the pantheon was diverse, and many deities were worshipped throughout Mesopotamia. And now, the Akkadians enter the stage. Around 2334 BC, their leader, Sargon of Akkad, seized power and conquered the whole of Mesopotamia. Unlike the fragmented Sumerian city-states, he managed to create the first centralized empire, the Akkadian Empire. They adopted Sumerian writing and culture, but introduced centralized administration and greater territorial control. The empire lasted until 2150 BC, when it was overrun by the Gutians, a tribe of unknown origin from the mountains. For about a century, they broke Mesopotamia back into smaller states. But then came the Sumerian king Utu-Hegal, who defeated them. One of his generals, Ur-Nammu, soon broke away and founded the so-called Third Dynasty of Ur. Ur-Nammu also commissioned the first great ziggurat in the city of Ur and issued the earliest known law code in history. His son Shulgi later reunited the entire region of the Persian Gulf under his rule. But even this empire did not last forever. After the death of Shulgi, his successors had to face attacks from the Amorites and the Elamites. The empire gradually fell apart, and the last king of the Third Dynasty of Ur, Ibbi-Sin, ruled only the city of Ur itself. And it was the victory of the Amorites that opened the way for the rise of a new great empire. That empire was the old Babylonian Empire. The city of Babylon itself had existed since around 3000 BC. But at first, it was only a small and insignificant settlement. It gained importance only under the rule of the Amorites. The most famous ruler of Babylon was Hammurabi, who reigned between 1792 and 1750 BC. He became renowned for his law code, one of the oldest in the world. It contained more than 280 laws regulating family life, trade, and punishments. From it comes the famous principle, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But beware, punishments differed depending on a person's status in society. Hammurabi's reign marked the peak of the old Babylonian Empire, but in 1595 BC, the Hittites came from Asia Minor, led by King Mursili I. They captured Babylon, bringing an end to Amorite rule. Their domination was brief, but it was enough to bring down the old Babylonian Empire, and it was the Hittites who later clashed with another great power of the ancient world, ancient Egypt. And that will be the subject of our next video. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of 10 Minutes History.